1045 The Team, 1045theteam.com, bringing in Joe Manganiello of the Crossover Chronicles and the Watertown Daily Times. Joe, there's two camps here. There's the camp that says that Kristaps Porzingis was the best player available. He can shoot it well from the outside. And then there's the camp that says, what is Phil Jackson doing? This guy won't be able to help in 2 to 3 years. That the Knicks passed on Emmanuel Mudiay. They passed on Justice Winslow and others. Which side are you on?
Well, I actually just posted a piece on Crossover Chronicles this morning about this very issue. And here's where I lie. At the time, I was very disappointed. I wanted Jahlil Okafor, and it was sort of a tease, right? The Lakers go with Russell, and it's right there for you. You can see the 76ers going with Porzingis or possibly trading down, and the Knicks could end up with Okafor. He's a perfect big man to build around the triangle system. Phil Jackson was not mincing words last week when he said he would have loved to have Okafor. But he goes with Porzingis. And after I had some time to think about it, what I wrote was, I like the bold decision by Phil Jackson. You know, it feels like the first real move that he's made since taking over the presidency, and James Dolan pays him far too much money to make passive, safe decisions. And if he thinks Porzingis could be a Pau Gasol 2.0 in his system, I am willing to be patient and watch the Knicks develop around this kid. As long as they develop him, as long as they commit to this decision. Look, the Knicks have made too many soft decisions over the years that have set them back. If they really are serious about building around Kristaps Porzingis in New York, they just got to do it. I think the fans will respect the move if they start winning basketball games in a couple of years. But look, Phil Jackson, a man who has won 13 NBA championships, just tied his legacy to Kristaps Porzingis. I can't say it enough. It is a very bold and courageous move by Phil Jackson.
Stephen A. Smith was just on Mike and Mike literally about 10 minutes ago, and he said that if he were Carmelo Anthony, he would be demanding a trade right now because essentially Phil Jackson lied to Carmelo Anthony, saying that he was trying to build a winner now, and Porzingis doesn't exemplify that position because he won't be able to really help the Knicks for 2 to 3 years. If you're Carmelo, how do you take last night's draft?
I'm not going to go all the way that Stephen A. did and say that Phil Jackson lied to Carmelo, but I do think it's possible the Knicks and Carmelo Anthony make a joint decision this summer to move on from each other, and the Knicks actively shop Carmelo. Look, they paid Carmelo Anthony far too much money to waste the next couple seasons in mediocrity. And I think he would be more useful on another team. You know, I think we all realize that Carmelo Anthony probably can't be the best player on a championship team, and that's going to just become more difficult as he gets older. If they can find a trading partner that's willing to, give a fair return for a player who could easily be the number 2 piece on a championship team, it just makes too much sense. A lot of teams have cap space right now. It's not impossible to move him, and it might take a hit to his ego to leave New York, and I know that's been a huge drawing point for him for years now, but I just think for both sides, it's clear the Knicks want to be slow in this rebuild, and I think they should be. And I think Carmelo Anthony wants to win now. And I just wouldn't be surprised if they come up with some sort of trade. And look, we know that the Lakers have had an interest in the past. That would make a lot of sense to me. So, yeah, I think Carmelo Anthony could end up on another team by October.
Of course, all that speculation. Joe Manganiello, Watertown Daily Times, Crossover Chronicles. The Knicks also trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Wizards for the rights to Jerian Grant, who was Notre Dame's point guard this year, helped lead the Irish to the Elite Eight. What's your thoughts on that move?
Oh, I love that move. I actually think that combining that move with the Porzingis pick, it was a really good day for the Knicks. Because, again, Knicks fans have been waiting so long for a team to be relevant again. It's been since 1999 that we've had a really good team that the fan base can be proud of. We had the fluke run a couple of years ago. And I think Jerian Grant is the point guard of the future. And for the first time, we have a point guard that I really feel excited about. 6'5", he is a very talented offensive player, and he provides something on the defensive end that we weren't going to get from Tim Hardaway. I was actually really surprised that a team was willing to essentially trade a first-round pick for Tim Hardaway after the year he had. He had a pretty dismal season on obviously the worst New York Knicks team of all time, and his ego had really become his reputation at this point. And he's a guy who thinks a lot higher of himself than his playing abilities suggest. And I just love the move. I think Jerian Grant's going to be a solid pro.
Biggest surprise to you of the draft? To me, it was Justice Winslow falling to 10. What did you think?
Oh, you know what? That you probably took the words out of my mouth. I was sitting there watching Winslow fall, and the thing on NBA Twitter last night, everybody gets so excited. The Miami Heat speculation was there instantly. Probably after the Kings passed on Winslow, the build-up started to really come in. Is Winslow going to end up in Miami? Is Pat Riley really going to pull this off? And he did. You know, Pat Riley is a magician. I don't know how he does it. I'd have to say I was surprised at the Stanley Johnson pick for the Pistons. I know that's not a very sexy choice, but I thought that's where Winslow could have gone. And for them to pick Stanley Johnson when they could have traded down and still got him, that was really surprising to me. I also thought it was sort of odd that Charlotte, it was so clear they were going to take Frank Kaminsky. There were rumors for hours in advance of that pick that they were going to go with Kaminsky, and it gave anyone who wanted Kaminsky a chance to trade up. And, you know, I think 9 is a fair spot for Kaminsky. I'm actually pretty high on him. I think he could be a solid NBA starter. But they go with Kaminsky. They still have Al Jefferson. They have a lot of big men right now. So that was sort of surprising. I liked a lot of the picks, Brady. I thought the lottery went pretty well. You know, a couple picks here and there that I probably would have changed. But especially I think at the top, you know, we got a lot of really bad teams in the NBA that needed help, and I thought everyone, you know, got what they needed. I love Towns to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I love Russell for the Lakers. I think he's going to be a great point guard for them. And, you know, the 76ers, we're still sort of guessing and checking on what the process is and how that's going, but there's no doubt that Okafor is a talented player.
I thought CauleyStein went a little too high. I just think he's too limited offensively to be that high.
Yeah, he's not going to be a great offensive player. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that's indicative of Boogie on the way out, or do you think the Kings believe that Stein and Cousins could play together? I'm still kind of trying to figure that one out.
I think that George Karl, you know, is an old school basketball guy. I think he's trying to build a team that's predicated around defense, but also going to get up and down the floor. And I heard Chris Broussard say this morning that you know, he's a guy who wants Ty Lawson. So I think that George Karl is trying to get back to basics. A guy who's going to be, you know, Stein's going to be a rim protector. He's going to be a rebounder. But again, I just think he's too limited in an offensive driven league. Yeah,
this Kings offseason has already been so bizarre. I feel for Boogie Cousins. You know, you can think whatever you want about him, and obviously he's had, you know, some question marks along the way. But that's a top 10 talent in this league, and he's stuck in a situation where he just doesn't feel wanted. And you know, we've all played sports. We've all been on teams where we felt like we were part of something, and we felt like we weren't part of something. And I just feel for the guy. You know, he's heading into his 7th season in the league, and we really don't know what he's all about. And I just wonder if he needs a change of scene and if he's going to get that opportunity anytime soon. The Kings own his rights for the next 3 years, and if they're not good for the next 3 years, we might not see Boogie on a winning team until he's 28 years old, and that would just feel like a shame.
Last question, Joe. Joe Manganiello, Crossover Chronicles, Watertown Daily Times. It's amazing to me. I heard, I think it was Tom Penn who said this, who used to work for the Blazers in the front office, said that on average there's 7 really good players that come out of each draft. There's 7 rounds to the NFL draft, and you can find value up and down the entire draft. Why is it that with as many kids playing basketball as there are in this country and abroad, we can only get 7 good players out of only a 2-round draft? Why do you think that is? That's always been shocking to me.
Well, I think first of all, it's the difference in sport, right? So football, there are far more positions, and it's also more specialized because there's offense and defense. And so with all of the coordinators and all the levels, you know, you can find a diamond in the rough because maybe a guy just never had the right coaches, and he comes to your pro team, you got the right system. You also see in the NFL, it's always very situational. There's guys who thrive for one team, and they get their big contract, and they go to a second team, and they bust out. I think in the NBA, in basketball in general, because it's a sport where one player can change the entire fate of a team, i.e. LeBron James, it's harder for one single player to make a giant impact. And, you know, point blank, it's just harder for a player to move the needle. I mean, everyone's so talented at that level. You know, what really is the difference? And, you know, I feel bad singling these young guys out. But, you know, so a guy like Terry Rozier from Louisville ends up in Boston last night. He was instantly compared to Marcus Smart, who was a lottery pick last year for the Celtics. And, you know, I don't know if either one of those guys is much different than the other. You know, obviously Smart went 10 picks higher last year. But I think both guys are going to have a very similar career. And I don't think either guy is really a foundational piece at guard. But we just saw the Golden State Warriors win a championship without a quote-unquote, you know, best player in the world. You know, Steph Curry would be the closest thing to it. But he's a guy that some people didn't think could play when he got drafted in the league. So I think the key with the NBA is you have to build a great team, whether that's the way Cleveland did through LeBron James and you find role players to fit around him that are more or less interchangeable, or you build the ultimate team from top to bottom like Golden State did, or like how San Antonio has the last 17 years. Yeah, I think it's just on a team-by-team basis. But the reason why so many guys bust out is honestly teams you know, flake out on these kids. Sometimes they don't make the right decision, and then they have to give up quick because it's what have you done for me lately sport.
Joe Manganiello, Watertown Daily Times, Crossover Chronicles, NBA draft coverage, the Knicks, and everything else. Joe, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Brady.